one thing I wanted to ask you is what do you think, like a senior leader or someone with a leadership title, what is their role in helping others do this? I guess one thing would maybe be frameworks to go away and apply the things we're talking about here, right? Like, how do I share my insights with other people in a consistent way? How do I lead a project, perhaps? Is there some sort of checklist I've got for that? Or like, Ali, you mentioned those self-regulation and self-reflecting, are there tools we can give people that then mean they are going away and doing it in practice? Because I think that's the hard bit, is to do it day to day. Maybe when you don't know where you're starting or you're not a natural leader, and we want everyone to have that fair chance to sort of become a natural leader. Is it sort of beyond frameworks, or is that a good place to start?
I think frameworks give us a common language, so they enable us to see things through the same lens. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with frameworks. I think they're helpful for that exact reason. I've got a book here. But if you've got to give someone, let's say, have a really difficult conversation, you can't really sit there and pull up your book and go, I'm just going to kind of lean back on that framework. You kind of have to be able to help people develop the confidence in themselves as a leader, and recognize that there isn't one perfect one-size-fits-all for being a great leader. It's about playing to your strengths. It's about being authentic. It's about communicating with honesty and having empathy for people. There are some fundamental kind of pillars. But ultimately, if I'm thinking about the role of the senior leaders and how do you create a culture where you're getting the best from others and letting them step into that leadership space, it's about how do you help them create opportunities to self-reflect. How do you create those opportunities for them to try things, for them to absolutely not go to plan, and for them to be able to talk through that in a really safe space? So 100% frameworks, from my perspective, give us a common language. They give us a starting point. But it needs to go further than that, because a framework doesn't necessarily give me the confidence or the motivation either to actually go and lean on that and the intuition piece.
I think it comes back to what Chichi said about the leadership shadow as well. Like you said, if I'm a first-time manager and I'm doing a performance review and I completely lose track of my train of thoughts, I'm not turned into a textbook. What I'm doing is thinking, like, how did a good manager from my work life history handle this situation? What would they have done, for example? And I guess thinking about that flatter hierarchy, if we're a product of the leaders around us, and anyone can be a leader, we've got more people to learn from, but more maybe in a contextual sense as well. So, like, the more a company is full of natural leaders, they're doing it in a way that's a good cultural fit. And therefore, maybe it's a good way. Maybe that's another sort of byproduct of a flat hierarchy, is we're able to cement more of like a cultural leadership style. I don't know if that plays into what you were saying, Chichi.
Yeah, I mean, because if I use Multiverse as an example, so our leadership framework, I'm going to just call it that, is the 3 R's in terms of, like, you call it, is recruitment, retention, and results. So they're the three things. We wanted to keep it really simple, the 3 R's. So in terms of recruitment, we have we have a specific way in how we hire, which everybody kind of does the same thing, and it helps to have that common language and consistency of who we bring into the organization. And then from a retention piece, because we know how important that is, it's just 2 words: inspiration and developing. We inspire our people and develop them. Now, how that looks like for each person is very different. I'm a natural introvert. Someone who's an extrovert will inspire in different ways. So for me, for example, you have little things like, okay, when new people are joining the organization, I'd send them a little voice note, because it's an easy way for me as an introvert to connect with somebody and do something that way. And so when you're thinking about all the different people you can learn from, our 3 R's gives everybody common language. How people then articulate that is sort of down to them. But from a senior leadership perspective, the conversations we've always had is how do we model those behaviors first and foremost, what we want to see, because we know everybody's going to be kind of copying, so to speak. And particularly when you've got new leaders, they're always looking around, they're like sponges, and they're wanting to see, well, what does good look like? So you sort of have to set the expectation of what does good look like, because when things don't go well, or somebody does something wrong, the first question you ask yourself is, like, did they know how to even do the thing in the first place? Did I set the right expectation? And often, if we haven't done that, then we can go back to the drawing board with that. So you're sort of modeling that. And then in doing that, you're also then giving people space to kind of flex their own leadership style. So lots of people you can learn from. And in fact, I was talking to somebody just before this. I said, look, there's lots of people, think about who inspires you in this organization. What is it that you like about what they do? Take those things down and then think about how you can then apply that from your own stance. Okay. So we still all speak the same language, but we're all individuals. And I think that's really important as well. And then, coming back on Ali's point, being really clear and explicit that if you make mistakes, we've got your back, because we recognize that you're going to be trying different things. You might have to have a difficult conversation that doesn't go well. You might have to go back and clean it up. But knowing that gives people that confidence and that safety to try things and to test things and know that, okay, I'm not going to leave my job if I do this. And I think that's really important when you're leading.
Yeah, I think that taps into, I guess at the heart of this as well, is if we're operating with a flatter hierarchy, whether we're looking at it from the leadership or the learning perspective, people with leadership titles essentially have a different role now, right? Like that's part of it as well. It's no longer you need to lead every project, but maybe you need to just set expectations for every project so that other people can lead it, or you don't have to make every decision, but you have to, like you said, maybe give people the sort of safety net that if they do make the decision, all the consequences don't come back on them. So I guess it's, that is part of it. How far do we give people autonomy? Like we let you run with a project, but to what extent? So a lot of the time people do just need that clarity and expectation setting. And that, I suppose, is that part of this as well, this flat hierarchies idea?
Definitely, because, in most organizations, well, effectively in every organization, you hire great people, intelligent people who can go and do what you want them to do. So by setting that frame up front of like, here's where we want to get to. This is the ultimate goal. You go and do it in the way you feel is best. Actually really empowers somebody to go and do it in the way that they feel is best. Now, they may make mistakes along the way, but ultimately they've had that autonomy and they're empowered to go and do that. And when you are really clear on, here are the boundaries of how we do something. When we think about excellence, this is what excellence looks like in this organization, but we're not prescriptive around the how. And I think that's really important. And especially in fast growing organizations, you cannot always be prescriptive around the how. You want to be really clear about where we want to get to, but then you allow, individuals to go and do what they need to do. And this is where, they can look to their peers and learn from each other. They can come together and share ideas and kind of come and have a plan. But as a leader, you're not there dictating, you must do it this way. And I think you get a lot more creativity and a lot more innovation that way.
I think you make a really good point there, Chichi, around boundaries, because I think unless we are clear around our expectations, there's a level of assumption. I think we've all been there where we've assumed somebody's understood what we said, and we've also been on the flip side of that where we've totally got the wrong end of the stick. But what does that look like when I guess we're kind of delegating decision making, for example, is what does the scope of that actually look like? If this is where we're going, this is our end goal, do I have total freedom to get there in whichever way that I think is right for the business? Or are there some boundaries? So actually, Ali, I want you to go away and kind of come up with 3 different avenues that we could explore and recommend to me which of those 3 we think we should be choosing. But being clear about what that means at different times, because it's not, a one size fits all. It changes contextually. It changes based on what the risks are. It changes based on what the project is and who else is involved. But I don't believe, I say slightly with less conviction, that we can ever over communicate. I think maybe there are certain times where we possibly could, but I think the more transparent that we can be with people and the more we can bring them along in terms of kind of that collective boundary setting too, the more empowered we feel, and also the greater levels of confidence we feel in then making decisions, because we truly feel like we're both on the same page and that other person's got my back.
Yeah, 100%. Because we actually talked about this recently, and I was doing some training around decision making last week, and we talked about this very thing of decision boundaries. And when you think about some of the barriers why people don't make decisions, make them poorly, is that thing of like, they don't know what their scope is, what they're allowed to make decisions on. And so particularly in learning environments where you're wanting to really upskill people quite quickly and allow people then to go and apply what they know and take action, having clarity around that is so important. It helps with escalation. It makes sure that we're aligned on values at the beginning. It makes sure we're aligned on where we want to get to at the end. And then, the decision boundaries are not always necessarily like up and down. With your manager, it could be with your team or with your peers. Like, we're working on this project. My role is this, your role is this, your role is this. So you hold each other accountable for what you're all agreeing to do. And then things can actually move a lot faster.
And I think that becomes even more important when we're talking about organisations wanting to have a flat hierarchy, because we still need to make decisions as a business. And where do those decisions sit? And particularly as you kind of start to scale, and it's, what does that look like for me? Because the decisions that I might have been responsible for making today might look totally different this time next month or this time in 6 months. So continuing to communicate where roles and responsibilities or decision making is shifting to is important.